Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Michael Kitces. So for the topic this week, I wanted to field a question I'm actually hearing more and more often. I came in most recently from Brandon, who asked, I'm thinking about hiring a virtual assistant, but how do I find one in my time zone, or does that even matter? And I hear this discussion a lot of more interest in virtual assistants, but how, like, the cool thing is they don't have to be geographically located where you are. They can be anywhere that they want to be. And then, of course, the challenge is they don't have to be where you are. They can be anywhere they want to be. And a whole lot of dynamics change around how you work effectively with a virtual assistant. So I want to talk a little bit about this dynamics. I live a lot of this. I built a large portion of my business off of virtual assistants. So I'm actually supported by a pretty wide array of part-time people, each of whom have their own specialized functions. So I've got a web developer. He's 150 miles away. I've never met him in person. My full-time executive assistant is 600 miles away in Chicago. My graphic designer is 800 miles away in Kansas. My marketing assistant is 1,200 miles away in Texas. And so you're spanning a lot of the country, multiple time zones. It's certainly been transformative for me to be able to find good people that I can delegate to give specific tasks, make sure it gets done. It lets me leverage my time. Frankly, it's taught me to get better at delegating. Some of you may have seen some of the articles I've written on the past about how I got better at delegating using screencasting software to capture what I do and then delegate it to someone and never do it again. And so for me, it started with bookkeeping, some like client advisory agreements and contractual kinds of stuff. And then it just expanded over time to the depth of the team that I've got today. So as advisors, we have lots, frankly, of opportunities to leverage virtual assistants and help in the business. That could be anything from outsourcing operational tasks, so downloads and reconciliation of your software, preparing reports, at least digital ones, not physical printout reports, handling client agreements, making sure meetings are getting scheduled, that follow-up is happening when it's supposed to on administrative tasks, even things like preparing financial plans, outsourcing your bookkeeping and accounting for the business, outsourcing some support on blogging, social media, and marketing activities. Frankly, for advisory firms, because most of what we do is ultimately, we're knowledge workers. Like, we interact with clients and contribute intellectual value, not physical stuff. We're not making things. We're not making widgets. There's frankly almost nothing, I think, that actually has to be done physically in an advisory firm to support an advisory firm. Almost none of it actually needs to be done there. It can all be outsourced out. But that raises these kind of administrative practical questions, like, do time zones matter, and does the location actually matter? So as someone that's lived this, I have to admit, I think it matters a little. I even at one point, I have done some virtual work where I actually outsourced it overseas. There's a lot of virtual assistant companies out of Southeast Asia that are extremely inexpensive. So, your dollar gets a lot of bang for the buck. But I have to admit, it didn't work well for me. The halfway around the world thing means there's almost no contemporaneous communication that you go back and forth on. It doesn't really work. You have to, I send a message before I go to sleep. They work on it while I'm asleep. I wake up in the morning. There it is. All right, well, that's fine if it was a finite item. But if there's back and forth, then I have to respond to something. Then I got to wait another day for them to get into it. So I didn't like the halfway around the world thing. But time zone changes within the U.S., I found, frankly, are pretty negligible. Most of my team actually is not East Coast time. They're either Central time or Mountain time. And I found almost no issue with that dynamic in particular. Because the truth is, like, you don't always need to be in constant contact. You need some chunk of time where you overlap with your virtual assistant so that you can delegate things and get feedback and give feedback and get things back. But, like, you're not going to be with them continuously. I mean, just realistically, even the staff that's physically in your office, you see them an hour or two here or there through the day because the rest of the time you're in client meetings or out seeing clients or doing other stuff. So you don't need them, like, perfectly aligned with you all day, every day, but you do need some reasonable overlap of time. So I think almost anything in the U.S. is pretty feasible. When you start crossing oceans and you start moving 5+ time zones at a time, it gets a little bit harder. And so I did lean at least U.S. based for that reason, even though U.S. based is going to be more expensive than outsourcing to some other countries where the labor is cheaper. Now, it still raises the question is how do you find a virtual assistant? So I find this gets done a lot of ways. There are kind of generic virtual assistant sites that are really not specific to our industry, but can be done for a wide range of sort of operational, administrative, or personal tasks. Zirtual is a kind of a growing upstart in this space. Virtualassistants.com, virtualstafffinder.com, that's actually run by a gentleman named Chris Ducker, who's kind of big in the building virtual assistants, leveraging yourself with virtual assistants. His team mostly is based in the Philippines, but reportedly very well run and executed for being basically a foreign virtual service team. You can look at general freelancing sites, places like Upwork, that just helps you find people for general freelancing projects. Fiverr is another one where you can delegate little tasks for $5, thus the name. A lot of them have add-ons and you pay a little more, but it's a good place to outsource sort of one-off tasks. Now, I think for a lot of us advisors, you need someone that's a little bit more focused and dedicated to the practice on an ongoing basis. So when you start going down that road, I think you're going to be back to kind of a dedicated service, or frankly, a lot of our industry-based solutions. There are a number of virtual providers in the advisory world that work primarily or solely with advisors that I find are very underappreciated. Places like Jennifer Goldman's My Virtual COO, Jennifer Reiner's Consider It Done, Donnie Carpenter's Back Office Solutions. They all help with a wide range of kind of operational administrative tasks in advisory firms. You can outsource specific things like financial planning prep work to delegated planning or Burt Williamson's plan prep. As many of you know, we have a business for outsourcing your bookkeeping and accounting for advisors called FA Bean Counters. So there are actually a lot of specialized services. And the important thing to recognize in doing virtual assistants and outsourcing well is that you're not necessarily trying to find one person to do everything. The point is to find focused experts that do particular things well. So hand out specific items in areas of relevance. So there's a question here, compliance issues to be concerned about. Yeah, certainly anything where you've got access to private client information, you probably need a privacy agreement with the provider that acknowledges that they're supposed to respect the privacy of the clients, particularly since they're otherwise likely going to be engaged as an independent contractor. Now, ultimately, you're going to tie them in with web-based software, right? We already have cloud CRMs. It's not new that you might access the CRM from a different place, and any staff member that touches your client information or your CRM should have a controlled login. You should have an audit trail to track what's going on with the client activity, and any staff member should be acknowledging that they're going to honor the privacy policy of the firm. So you'll still need that done even if you're working virtually as well. But beyond that, I'm not aware, at least, of any specific impediments around compliance beyond the same things that, frankly, you should have as an obligation for any employee of the firm, virtual contractor or otherwise. Then just make sure that you're using software where you can control the access. So it means things like don't give your virtual assistant your personal login to your advisor CRM. Buy them a separate license. I know it's a little bit more expensive to buy them a license, but when you buy them a license, if you let them go, you can turn the license off. If you give them your access, direct access to all your personal stuff and your personal logins, it's kind of hard when you terminate the relationship, whether like problematically for cause or just they're moving on. Now you have to change all your passwords and logins to cramp down on the information. That's just more problematic. So get them their own logins or use a controlled system that limits their access like Meldium, where you're not sharing your personal passwords directly, so that you can turn off their access to client information when you terminate. That's probably the biggest thing. The agreement should make them honor your privacy policy, and then make sure that you can terminate their access at the end. I suppose I have to obligatory say, run this by your compliance firm as well. Maybe your compliance consultant has something else to say about it. But at least for as advisors, I've commonly seen doing this. Those are sort of the primary items that are blocking points or where they need to handle this. So there's a question about posting these references. When we post the full video for this with the transcript to Nerd's Eye View on Thursday, we'll have all the links to all the resources as well. So I'll make sure they're listed there because I can't type them into Periscope while we're chatting here. But I'll make sure there's a list of them. So stay tuned on Thursday. Now, I know one of the other, sorry, and actually the last thing I should note on this in terms of where you find virtual assistants is also just your own personal network. Like the people you know. My original virtual assistant actually came from my personal network. It was someone that I knew who had worked in the workforce, did great work. She took time off to start a family. She was out of the workforce for a couple of years. Her kids got to the point where they're going to kindergarten. She wanted to come back into the workforce. And so she started working with me. And as her kids have gotten older and are a little bit more independent, and my business needs have grown, she went from 5 hours a week to 10 hours a week to 15 hours a week to 20 hours a week, and now works with me full time. So kind of evolved into it in a way that worked for both of us. So even for me, it's been a blend. My primary virtual assistant came from my virtual network, but a lot of the others that I've done for web developers came off of a referral. Actually, most of the team, as I think about that I use, came off of personal networking around, just trying to find people who are good at certain things. And the good news was I didn't care where they were. I could work with them virtually. So that's actually very freeing. Like I get to leverage my whole national network to find, do you know anybody who does blank well? Not that you even have to go that broad, but a lot of the good people that you may find who just need flexible work, you can find them through your personal network as well. So not to knock Zirtual and Upwork and the other places. I've used Upwork and Fiverr a number of times as well. But a lot of the ongoing relationships, I think you'll find actually come from your personal network. Now, in terms of what it costs, I get this question a lot. What do you pay for it? So a lot of this actually varies depending on the kinds of tasks you're doing. So the broad base of, call them administrative style tasks, operational stuff, I find tends to start at about $15 to $25, maybe $30 an hour for that sort of work. A lot of the work can get done at about $20 to $25 an hour. That's kind of a healthy professional hourly rate for someone that does reasonable work, particularly when they're flexible on their end, right? They don't have to go to an office. They get flex time, all the kind of the nice lifestyle benefits that come from being a virtual assistant, working with someone else. The more experienced they are and the more competent they are, it starts moving up the line. And the more specialized the experience, the more it moves up. So if you're trying to find people that have deep background experience in our industry, you might find $30 an hour, $40 or $50 an hour. If you're looking at outsourcing things like financial plan preparation, where you probably need someone that's got a CFP and a lot of experience to be able to do that fairly unsupervised and just give you a quality finished product, that gets more expensive. You might pay $100 an hour or $150 or even $200 an hour for that work. But again, recognize this in the context of your own time. So, the simple math is if you work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, there's about 2,000 hours a year of working time. And so if you want to be productive on your end, if your goal is, hey, someday I want to make $200,000 as an advisor, the value of your time should be $100 an hour. And anything you can let go of that isn't worth $100 an hour, you need to let go of. So it doesn't matter whether they cost $80, $60, or $50, or $30. Heck, if they cost $30 and it takes them 3 times as long to do it as it took you, you're still ahead by doing that. So recognize the opportunity. I mean, part of this is just the virtues of delegation in general. But the nice thing about virtual assistants and virtual staff, the flexibility that comes from it, including the fact that for the person who's working with you, they're only expecting to get paid for the hours they do stuff for you that's connected to the work that you've done and delegated to them. So relative to hiring a full-time staff member that almost anybody who's a small or solo advisor has gone through, when you're thinking about hiring someone and your headcount is going to go up by 100% because you add a second human being and you have to swallow a full-time salary and benefits and all the rest at once, and it's a huge jump for most advisors to go through. Virtual assistant is like the blessed middle ground. If you just need to delegate 10 hours a week of work, bring someone on for 10 hours and only pay for that 10 hours, not a full-timer where you only have 10 hours of stuff for them to do. And then as your business grows, you may find 10 hours becomes 20 and 20 becomes 30, and then maybe you graduate up into having a full-timer, but you get there more slowly and steadily in a manner that better aligns with the business than taking on a big hiring chunk all at once. So there's a lot of virtue for the flexibility, as well as just getting people who are really specialized as what they do. So, when you hire a virtual assistant, you'll have to train them on your process. how you want to work with them, how you're going to interact, what you expect out of the work quality. But you generally don't have to train them about the details of how to do their job, right? Like you don't have to train FA bean counters about how to do accounting for advisors. That's what we do. You don't have to train outsourced operations people for advisory firms how to do operations. That's what they do. And so when you find more focused and dedicated virtual staff, you also relieve at least a big portion of that training obligation that I know is very burdensome for a lot of advisors. You just should really just have to show them or explain it to them once, and then you still have to occasionally check in and make sure that's being done the way you expected, but it's not the same kind of hands-on intensive training experience. So I hope that's helpful as a little bit of food for thought around just virtual assistants, where to find them, kind of what it realistically costs. Andy, you have a great question here. How do you oversee quality standards and their hours? Yeah, I mean, ultimately, as with kind of anything, quality standards, you're going to judge by outcomes. You're going to judge by the quality of the work that comes back to you. I know certainly for my interaction with virtual assistants, I keep most of it directly to me. It was a long time before I opened up having my virtual assistants interact directly with any of the people that I work with. It started through me because then I could be the ultimate quality control check. As they got more competent and I got more comfortable, I kind of loosened the reins on that and allowed them to communicate more effectively than each other. But I think part of it is just, you'll graduate them up in complexity of tasks over time as you see the outcomes and what they're doing, and evaluate whether ultimately it's good work product, it's good work quality. Now, in terms of evaluating like their hours and whether they're putting in the hours, frankly, I mean, a lot of this is going to come down to trust. I mean, even if someone's physically in our office, like unless I hover over their doorway and keep looking over their shoulder, at some point, even the people who are physically in our office, I only know so much about what they're doing all day. At the end of the day, I mean, I think you judge by work product, you judge by outcome. Like, did the stuff that was supposed to get done? And particularly in the small advisor environment where you're delegating things, and frankly, you should have some sense as to how long it takes, because you know how long it took you to do it in the past before you delegated it. That should give you some sense of it. I mean, add a little timing, because they're not as trained on it or experienced on it necessarily as you. Maybe some tasks they'll be faster and more efficient, but you can get a sense on that end. In terms of billing, typically by time for almost everything that I've seen, because frankly, virtual assistants are in the business of dollars for time. So when they do it based on task, frankly, they don't want the risk that it takes longer or that you interact with them more and ask more questions and make them do more changes, and then it comes out of their margin because they quoted the wrong time up front. So I suppose you might find some project-based items that fit a little bit into that context. I think some of the outsourced plan delegation folks actually have an ability to let you delegate, like, here's a plan, it costs blank, here's what we'll produce for you. But most of the ongoing virtual assistant work, I find it's billed based on time. Hopefully their time is comparable to yours, maybe slightly longer, but it's lower cost than what you value your time at. Or maybe if it's even higher cost, but you're just trying to leverage yourself a little bit more to get over that. So yeah, there's a question here, bill per project on one-offs. Yeah, I think you could try to do it that way. But again, I mean, it's going to be a two-sided thing. Like, why from the advisor end do you want to bill a single project on a one-off basis? Because you're hoping to get more time out of them for a single project, right? Like, that's why we do it. So if you're the virtual assistant, why do you want to do project time when you can just bill hourly? Well, same thing the other end. You'd rather bill hourly, right? I mean, we go through this with our clients. Our clients want us to bill a fixed fee for the plan. We want to bill hourly so that if the plan takes 47 hours, we don't get screwed on the project. You're going to go through the same thing, I think, with a virtual assistant. So I think with a specific one-off project that's feasible, with a more ongoing relationship, which I think is what you'll find a lot of these turn into if they go well. It's not project-based in the first place. It's more ongoing, time-based. Here's the stuff I need help with. Here's the time they put in, and the exchange happens. So I hope that's helpful as food for thought. Great questions, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Sorry again for the technical difficulties in the first attempt for the broadcast, but this is Office Hours with Michael Kitces, 1 p.m. East Coast time on Tuesdays. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you.